Being a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's since the franchise's first game, confirmation of the past era of Five Nights at Freddy's being complete and moving on to the next era is bittersweet, but I'm absolutely loving it. Don't get me wrong, the OG games and lore will always stick with me, and I'll miss the mysteries of Willie Afton. However, stories can only go on for so long before more characters need to be introduced. Scott and Steele sure as heck are doing a great job with introducing the new ones. I get a lot of you questioning the book's continuity, but with a lot of studying and analyzing how the book's connected to the games, I've been won over. I've already done a video based around Candy Cadet being connected to the Mimic origin past, which included the origin of the Mimic. But I've decided since then that I want to make 2 separate videos out of it. This will be a look into the Mimic and its origin. So way before the VS, MCI, DCI, the bytes, even the locations themselves, we have Edwin Murray and his creation, the Mimic. To better summarize these stories, I will do so in the order of how the events actually would have took place versus how the books did it, in which the Storyteller was really released first, then the Mimic. Without further ado, let's get right into it. In the mid-1970s, we are met with a man named Edwin Murray, an engineer, a master at his craft, said to be able to create anything from nothing. When he was 4 years old, he found himself fascinated with machines and took apart his mother's appliances to see how they would work. At 8 years old, he knew he wanted to make machines that would be useful to others, something that could do the work, that we didn't want to do, inventions that would change people's lives. That in 1973, he's happily married to a woman named Fiona. From there, he starts his own company, Murray's Costume Manor. This featured his robotic vacuum cleaner at first, but grew with Fazbear Entertainment's buyout. We'll get to that. At this time, he's already acquired a factory to conduct his work and a mansion. A year or so into running his business, his wife Fiona gives birth to their son David. However, this leads to a tragic event. His wife had died during childbirth, leaving him and his son David to raise alone while raising a business. He sells his house and the two live in the factory together. Edwin makes David a bed with a white tiger head as the headboard. This is important to note as the white tiger comes up a lot throughout these stories and in the future. Between the expenses of the machinery and raising his son, financial struggles arose, leaving Edwin no choice but to sell his company to Fazbear Entertainment in 1977. There's that buyout I mentioned. For the next year and a half, he would build animatronics for the company, attaching them to suits provided by Fazbear Entertainment. By 1978, he was working on his 18th animatronic, the bright yellow chick. When his son interrupted him, causing him to mess up the soldering job he was doing, the head then drops to the floor, bringing it to be damaged. Edwin's workload was too much for him, and finally he decided to make a robot friend. That's not a good idea. To help him in taking care of his son while still being able to work. Using unused and random materials from his factory, he then constructs a torso-up robot. Installing hardware from one of his old abandoned projects, he programs it with high-tech language code, using Pascal and C code. This program would enable the bot to have a thinking mind, one that would learn by mimicking what it observes. This process takes about 22 days to complete, and he calls this program the Mimic 1. Him and his dad collectively name him the Mimic after its program's name. Together, David and Mimic grew together, Mimic being taught childlike behaviors in games like hide and seek, patty cake, catching the ball, and making their own sign language to communicate, like asking for ice cream. David would hide in the suits sent by Fazbear Entertainment, I assume in games of hide and seek, and Mimic learns to do this as well. Time would pass, Mimic would learn more and more and adapt very quickly. Edwin then thinks to tinker with upgrading him during the night, eventually upgrading him to be able to move around better, keeping up with David. Mimic would begin to copy the way David would act. Like I mentioned, their own kind of sign language. For example, David has a plush tiger. The two eventually worked together in making one for the Mimic after asking Edwin, but he couldn't afford it. Mimic would then carry that plush around, holding it as David did in his arms clutch. Even before he got the plush, he would still mimic the gesture of holding one. Seeing Mimic able to create like that shows him that he's not only mimicking, but responding, acting in his own way. Still in playing games of hide and seek, it would do as David did, hide in the suits. However, when he did it, he would make them all dirty. Being told by Edwin that that was bad behavior, Mimic at this point didn't really seem like he knew what was right from wrong. With that, more tinkering plays out, and he wants to try and fix him once again, to understand right from wrong and accommodate David even better. However, not long after this, something very tragic occurs. After being woken up by his son to go play ball, he sleepily shoos him off, agreeing him to meet him downstairs when he's fully awake. David takes this as an okay to go outside, so he does just that, runs outside to play with his ball. When David finally makes it out, however, he witnesses a sight that seems like it was drawn straight from a nightmare. His son David had been hit by a car, trying to retrieve his ball, and tragically dies. Mimic still sitting in the factory. For the next 2 weeks, Edwin is sent into a deep depression. However, one day, Edwin loses his last bit of sanity when the forgotten, unpowered Mimic pushes him over the edge, holding not his own, but David's white tiger plush in his clutches like he once did. Edwin snatched the plush from him, but when Mimic continues to motion for ice cream like he was once taught, he had enough. Picking up a metal rod, he brutally beats the Mimic. These hatred and murderous thoughts and actions feed into the Mimic system, Mimic now learning these angry behaviors. When his anger is let out, regret then flushes over him. After crying next to Mimic's battered body, he decides to run away, Edwin abandoning his factory and the Mimic, his creation. Here we're met with a little bit of a time skip. By December 1978, his property was taken over by Fazbear Entertainment due to a breach in their contract. There is a team of 2, Terrence and an unnamed man, sent to the old factory to assess the situation and retrieve anything of importance. This team would finish projects and gather Fazbear Entertainment's property. As they fix up the place and examine things, they document their findings with a tape recorder. While in the process of searching the factory, they found remains of the Mimic. Still legless, the team attempts to fix him, putting a pair of legs on him from an old animatronic. From here, the Mimic awakens and murders the team, reenacting what it was last taught to him, but in more gruesome ways, locking one in the fridge to freeze, and another impaled with a metal rod and hung in the closet. Probably learned by seeing Edwin and David use the fridge, closet, and, well, we know where the metal rod comes from. Skip ahead a few months later to another team of 3 sent to check out the situation. This team of 3, Dominic, Harry, and Glenn, enter and are unknowingly immediately locked in. They notice a variety of animatronics, Chica, Foxy, Bonnie, and Freddy, and 2 jester costumes with a color palette of yellow, green, and pink. Finding a tape recorder, they listen to the events of what happened to the previous team. That they were trapped inside when entering, the door just closed behind them. There are several tape entries, but the last part explains that they will be fixing an advanced endo with no legs. The second team continues on. They take notice that one of the jesters that were previously seen are gone. Under investigation, they find the previous members' bodies in the fridge and closet. The missing jester costume, being the Mimic, comes out of nowhere and murders one of the members immediately. The other 2 manage to run and hide. Now swapped suits, the Mimic hides in the mushroom costume, able to disguise himself, making the 2 unaware of where he is. He kills another team member. The remaining member takes off and retrieves a weapon for protection. When he returns, he finds the body of his teammate gone, and the mushroom costume is now empty. As the events are playing out, the group traveled back and forth up and down the factory's floors. This time, the last one standing goes back up to the third floor and notices a rotting gray gold tiger costume arise. The tiger grabs a hold of him and rips him apart. So, okay, we have 2 teams now killed by the mimic. Fun little fact, I had to redo this 3 times now. The first time, the program I was using kind of just glitched out on me. And the second time, gameplay was released, so I had to change a few things. And the third time, which was my most recent, this is actually my 4th, my laptop black screened on me, so. But anyways, I had originally guessed on what the gameplay may have been here. While my guess was pretty close, I wasn't right on the nose. It wasn't exactly what I had said, but it wasn't far off. If you want to see more on that, I did a quick video and posted a while back. Alright, well I know everything I just said was a lot. The next bit shouldn't be as long. To explain, I'll simplify as much as possible. On to the epilogues. And we are met with yet another time skip. Another team of 4 are in charge of cleaning up the old rundown Freddy Fazbear's pizza place. Danny, Owen, Carlo, and Gil are tasked with breaking down old, damaged endoskeletons. This section of the Pizzaplex was going to be a museum. This building lay underneath the surface of the construction of the next edition of Fazbear Entertainment, the Mega Pizzaplex. While the team works, a delivery truck arrives containing a new and improved state-of-the-art animatronics. Possibly the Glamrocks, Monty, Chica, Roxy, Freddy, and Bonnie. I so want to say Foxy, but no one knows where he is. And I refuse to believe my boy was replaced by Roxy. I love her too, but just no. Upon unloading the truck, and after getting a good look at them all, one member notices an endoskeleton that looks old and out of place. Curious about this form of endo, they keep it in the old pizza place where they are working to see if they can repurpose it. This one member, named Gil, while not having any work experience programming, they dabbled in robotics and electronics at home. So they hook up the mimic, well, we assume it's the mimic, to their laptop, and program a cleanup and a code that gives them instructions to break off the heads and limbs of all the animatronics and pile them by the exit door. Mimic is then activated, and while the initial moment that he's turned on is a bit unnerving, he just stares at them for a few minutes before turning to the old endoskeletons and continues with the task at hand. Pleased with the Mimic's work, the team heads back to continue with their jobs. However, it's now where the Mimic tries to play out his role. Mimic takes a hold of one of the team members and rips him apart. The other 2 flees and causes commotion. This brings the attention of the other workers who come to investigate. Eventually, one murder turns into a bloody massacre. One brave team member closes the exit door shut to the pizzeria. They then continue to beg cement workers to seal off the doors before they run. After these events, the pizzeria as a museum was obviously scrapped. All access to the underground pizzeria was closed off, and the Mega Pizzaplex would be built, hoping to hide their mess once again and start over. That was more or less just a summary of Epilogue 1. Epilogues 2 to 8 requires yet another time skip. We are met with 8 teens that want to check out the Mega Pizzaplex construction site when getting bored at a nearby carnival. Rumors had it they had a shipment of the new animatronics come in. So, they set out to do just that. Oh boy, here we go again. The group consisted of a couple, Adrian and Hope, along with their double dates, Lucia and Jace. Eventually, they are joined by Hope's cheerleading friends, Nick and Kelly, as well as Adrian's football friends, Wade and Joel. Lucia, being hesitant due to hearing about something horrible happening, didn't stop the group. They thought they could solve the mystery. Trust me, mystery solving in Five Nights at Freddy's is never easy. They are met with a 12-foot chain-linked fence labeled "Danger, Do Not Enter," plastered along it. Spoiler alert, they find a way in, despite the red flags yelling danger. During their investigation, they find a ramp that leads to the entrance to the old pizzeria. Halfway down, they are met with a block. What's that block, you ask? Hardened concrete. That would mean there's definitely something down there that's sealed off for a reason. But you guessed it, one of them finds a vent on the roof that leads down into the pizzeria, and they all jump down, going in despite the clear warnings not to. Curiosity and amusement quickly transitioned into fear when they realized ahead among the broken up endoskeletons was actually a real human head. With no way out and the mimic approaching, after the group runs and hides, they decide to split up into different directions in groups of 2, in hopes of finding a way out. This obviously doesn't end well, as I'm sure you could guess. Each of them are killed off, one by one, except for one lucky survivor. The last one surviving thinks of a smart idea. Remembering the manual on the mimic that had details on the spring lock suits, she lures the mimic into a spring lock jester costume with hopes he would get stuck. Finding his deactivation switch, mimic is switched off, and the last teen escapes through a bathroom window that wasn't as concreted as the rest, thus surviving and trapping the mimic once again, but this time deactivated. Now, that story is out of the way. We have another time skip. Oh, I was very vague with who survived, just in case there was those that, wanted to read it for themselves. So mute me for a few seconds while I inform those who want to know, starting now. Is Lucia. Lucia survived and made it out. I was really rooting for her, so yay. Next, we move on to the Storyteller, and I'm sure you guessed it, another time skip. The Mega Pizzaplex is now up and running. However, they aren't making as much money as they thought they would with the setup the way it is. Mr. Boros, head of directory, decides on change that would aid in their financial struggles and boost revenue. What was this plan? Downsizing on the creative department, cutting down on staff, and implementing an AI program to tell the Pizzaplex's story. Guess who's back? No, not him. Edwin Murray, the brains behind Mimic. He is back and in the Pizzaplex. But now he's 64 years old? Wait, what? 24 in the mid-70s? 64 while in the Pizzaplex? And this story is noted to take place 40 years, I may add, after the event of the Mimic. And, well, he took off. How does this work? Wouldn't that make Pizzaplex open mid-2010s? Or early 2020? Another fun note. Edwin is noted to have been back and working for Fazbear just under 30 years since going missing. I'll give my opinion on that in a bit. For now, the important thing that we need to know is Edwin Murray is back and now he is a member of the board of directors. Where did he go for X amount of time? I'm not too sure, honestly, but he was out of a source of income and, well, had no money. Remembering his and Fazbear Entertainment's buyout agreement, they owed him money before he disappeared and, well, wanted to cash out. However, the company instead hires him on as a member. The other members are very disrespectful of Edwin with the exception of 1 or 2, but Mr. Burroughs really has it out for him. Getting back to the implementation of AI storytelling, Edwin hates this idea and expresses it, claiming the heart and soul of Fazbear Entertainment resides with the creativity aspects. Storytelling had to be told by a human that can have a connection with the Pizzaplex. Really, Edwin knows what giving a program a human mind of its own will really do. But despite all of Edwin's protests and the fact that he was supposed to be considered a consultant, Edwin should have had a say. But Mr. Burroughs just disregards everything he says. Oh, except for his suggestion for what the tree the storyteller would be. They went with Murray's idea of a baobab African tree. With the addition of Mr. Burroughs' fondness for color, he opted for the leaf's colors to be rainbow. What tree, you might ask? Well, Mr. Burrows decides that the storyteller would be unseen, living in a tree. Sitting in the middle of the pizzaplex, the tree and its roots would represent the pizzaplex and its roots. Connected through a program inside the tree was a series of wires that reached every part of the pizzaplex, enabling the program to retrieve information and data from all areas and recreate and retell stories. One thing that bothered Edwin is that he was not allowed in the tree to see the program. After some back and forth with Mr. Burrows as to why he can't, he gives up and decides he's going to find a way in himself. Through memos Edwin found, he learned the larger parts of Storyteller are to be delivered and placed into the tree on a Thursday night. Edwin, on the night of the scheduled delivery, sneaks through Monty Golf to try and get a good look at what's arriving. When he sees what they are moving into the tree, a giant white tiger head, he has a massive panic attack. Horrible memories come flooding back. After seeing this, the next day he confronts Mr. Burrows and asks yet again what program is being used, and he's just waved off with a simple answer. Not the answer he wanted. So with that, he takes matters into his own hands once again, noticing the animatronics acting strange, more aggressive, even childlike. Sound familiar? Edwin finds out that maintenance gets in through Monty Golf catwalks through a latch in the tree. So one night he sneaks into the tree. Upon entering, he lays his sights on that same large white tiger head, with one green eye and one blue. The head had 4 metal arms attached to it, 2 to each side. Noticing a small computer on the tree's walls, he takes a closer look and reads the program that is running the Storyteller. It is none other than the Mimic One. I just want to make a quick note here. You might be asking, okay, well, how did they get their hands on the Mimic One program? Surely, Edwin wouldn't have told anyone else about it, and it was deactivated. I'm going to make this short and sweet, but help wanted would be your answer. That circuit board that was scanned, the one that causes everything to glitch, that's the Mimic One program. I personally think that Glitch Trap was never really supposed to be Springtrap or anything to do with William Afton. Maybe Mimic's inspiration? In my timeline, in theory, he is still in Ultimate Custom Night, in an eternal endless hell. I simply think that Glitch Trap is the Mimic, mimicking William's antics. It's what he does. That's what makes sense to me. I know everything's just theories, so. Alright, now that I have that out there, let's get back to the Storyteller. After his discovery about the Mimic One program, Edwin continues to go back every night, writing "I'm sorry" and drawing pictures of stick people, as well as odd symbols on a bunch of sticky notes, and sticks them to the inner of the tree. Mr. Burrows now begins to notice the animatronics glitching out, immediately putting the blame on Edwin. Catching Murray on the camera, Burrows decides to lock him in one night, remotely shutting the tree's latch while Edwin's in there. The latch was not only his way in, but his air supply. He's left in there for a week. When Burrows returns, he thought Edwin might have had another way in or out, but, well, he didn't. He enters the Storyteller tree to find Edwin's dead corpse under a series of notes repeating the "I'm sorry's" and those drawings and symbols. The door had shut closed behind Mr. Burrows, and now he was trapped in there as well. He tried everything he could do to get out, yelled for help, pounded on the tree's interior, pulled the Storyteller's cords from him. However, the Mimic One stays on. Mr. Burrows resorts to attempting to beat the tiger until it shuts down, but that fails. He then meets the same fate as Edwin and runs out of oxygen. Fazbear Entertainment does what it always does and tries to sweep yet another horrific incident under the mat. The Storyteller tree was removed and hid from the public. However, it's too late. The Mimic One program remains within the Pizzaplex. And it's not too long after these events that we have the arrival of Gregory, and then we are on to security breach. Considering all this, it's not too far-fetched to fit into our current timeline. Yes, we need to move back FNAF Pizza Simulator and UCN. FNAF 3, I think a lot of us have already adjusted it to 2015, since the logbook kind of told us so. So, say Pizza Sim happens a year or so after 2015. It could work. UCN enrolled our happiest day and William Afton stuck in purgatory. So, it all still fits well. We all know Security Breach says it's March 9th on a Friday. And from that, fans originally said the possible dates could be 2029, 2035, 2046, 2057, 2063, and so on and so forth. But we never went further back in years because many of us just jumped to HRY 223, meaning Sim takes place in 2023. So Security Breach couldn't take place before that. I propose 2018. I will further this theory and supply more detail in my next video. I hope you enjoyed my little summary on the Mimic and Edwin Murray. Until next time.